Among the litany of accusations that led to the recent announcement of a royal commission into the institutional child sex abuse, none have been more shocking than those surrounding the Catholic order St John of God. For 40 years, boys placed in the order's care were molested, raped and physically assaulted. The story has hit the headlines this week with the arrest in New Zealand of a former brother accused of molesting 35 children in a home for intellectually disabled boys. Tonight, a former nun who worked for the order speaks out about what she says is a culture of collusion within its ranks. In a moment, I'll be joined by the head of the order, Brother Timothy Graham. But first, this report by Lisa Whitehead.
This is former Catholic brother Bernard McGrath. He's now facing possible extradition to Australia on 252 sex abuse charges. He's accused of abusing 35 children. The alleged offences occurred at the Kendall Grange Boys' Home in Morisset, south of Newcastle. It belonged to St John of God, an order of the church that's accused of covering up decades of allegations of abuse of vulnerable children in its care.
It's behaviour that's endemic within the order, and it's been allowed to go on for decades.
My latest count is about 200 victims, each of whom would have 5, 6, 10 or 20 allegations. So we're up to the thousands in terms of the number of incidents that have been reported.
Yarra View, a farm and workshop in Lilydale on the outskirts of Melbourne, was home to 90 intellectually disabled boys and men. It featured in a documentary aired by the ABC.
Yarra View is administered by a Roman Catholic order, the Brothers of St John of God. These 4 men live here with their family of 90, and together with a secular staff of about 30, they manage the farm and workshop where the men work, and they accept responsibility for their general welfare.
For 40 years, from the 1950s, this was one of 4 homes and a hostel run by the order in Victoria and New South Wales. Most of the boys and young men placed in their care were intellectually disabled. The brothers took a vow dedicating themselves to serving the church in the assistance of those who suffer and are in need.
It is my life and I want to give it as a gift. But I care very much for all of the fellows who are here. They often call you to love them in many different ways, and I think that's a real confirmation that you need it.
But dozens of the boys in institutions run by the St John of God order have alleged they were subject to horrifying sexual and physical abuse at the hands of some of the brothers.
I was abused every day. Sometimes I was bashed, sometimes I was raped, you know, being dragged along the floor at 8 years old or 9 years old. It's just not right, okay? And that's affected me, that's affected my family.
Michael Madsen is now 43. Back in 1980, when he was just a few years older than his young son is today, he was sent by his family to board at one of the homes run by the St John of God order.
They ruled on violence, horrific violence. Like, you know, you go and see horror movies and stuff today. We lived a horror movie, me and all these other kids.
In a class action settled in 2002, allegations were made against more than 20 brothers. The order admitted 24 boys and men with disabilities were sexually abused in 3 homes in Victoria over 30 years. It paid $3.6 million in compensation to the victims.
Were any of the alleged perpetrators charged by police?
The confounding fact in Victoria is that despite them being given evidence by at least 8 men who did not have any intellectual deficits about their experiences of widespread criminality, not a single person was ever charged, and that's something we still have to get to the bottom of.
Neither the Catholic Church nor the order has ever referred a single complaint to Victoria Police. Former nun and psychologist Michelle Mulvihill was on the order's Professional Standards Committee for 7 years and head of it for 3. She heard horrific accounts of alleged abuse from hundreds of men who had lived at the boys' homes.
Some children had complained of being tortured. We heard stories about children committing suicide. We were taken to graveyards to see their gravestones in some places. There were acts of ritual abuse, I would call it, where perpetrators would sit in a group with young boys and conduct sex with them, and then sit back and watch boys conduct sex with each other.
She travelled around Australia and to New Zealand with the head of the order to speak to men who claimed they'd been abused.
The first level of attitude was, we need to do something to help these victims. We have been founded to help people who live on the fringe. We need to be the good guys here. But underneath that, there was a soft belly of hardness, of criticism of victims, of laughing at them, of going, oh, that boy was a liar when he was at school, so he's still lying, of turning people away, and of protecting themselves and one another. And it's that kind of cover-up that I think's been going on for a very long time.
Chiringa School in Melbourne's north was one of the residential homes run by the order. Steve Denas was sent there at the age of 11. He claims he witnessed horrific physical abuse of other children and was sexually abused by one of the brothers.
How often would that sexual abuse occur?
Sometimes it'd be two times a week, maybe 3 times on some occasions, on some weeks,
And how many years did this go on for?
It was about, it started when I was 11, and it was about 5 or 6 years.
The man he accuses of molesting him was then known as Brother Gabriel Mount. Steve Denas went to the police with his allegations in the mid-1990s, but no charges were laid.
Oh, they just said it'd be your word against his. But, if I had that time over again now, like if I had the chance, I would go to court.
Instead of pursuing criminal charges against Brother Gabriel, he took his complaint to the order. In 1998, the order paid Steve Denas compensation and put $40,000 into a trust fund for his daughter for damages relating to claims of sexual abuse against Brother Gabriel. It admitted no liability. As part of the deed of settlement with the order, Steve Denas signed a confidentiality agreement.
Hush money. I can't call it compensation because it's not.
Gabriel Mount left the order and is now known as Father Roger Mount. Today he's a parish priest in Papua New Guinea.
They move him around from place to place, It's like, this Gabriel Mount's in New Guinea. What's he doing in New Guinea?
They hide them and they move them overseas. They hide them in houses that they own, and they go on as if nothing's wrong.
Father Roger Mount has never been charged with any sex offences, and when confronted last week, denied Steve Denas's claims that he sexually abused him. Michael Madsen received 2 confidential compensation payouts from the Order of St John of God. One in 1992 and the second in 1995, after he says he threatened to go to the police and the media with his allegations of abuse by another brother. The order did not admit liability, and Michael Madsen had to agree to discontinue any proceedings already commenced in the court.
It's a huge cover-up, yeah, obviously, and the church is just paying out money when they have to or when they see something in the newspaper, Like, I expect a phone call tomorrow for them asking for all the money back. I believe that's going to happen.
Michelle Mulverhill quit the order in 2007, disgusted at the way in which it handled complaints. She wrote to the head of the Order of St John of God in Rome, demanding the organisation be shut down in Australia.
He wrote back and said, oh dear, this couldn't possibly be true. There may have been some things that happened in the past, Michelle, but nothing's happening at the moment. Yet we have very recently in the newspapers discovered St John of God people in Papua New Guinea with live-in help of youth. We have also several brothers who are under police investigation at the moment. Now, that doesn't add up to me.
Michael Madsen says he's struggled to hold down a job and battled depression, alcohol and drug abuse throughout his adult life. He's now the sole carer of his 5-year-old son, but has no contact with his 6 other children.
Now I have a 5-year-old child that I have to focus on 24 hours a day and protect. And I have to put him to school next year. I know he's not going to be abused there, but I'm so scared of giving somebody else the responsibility to take care of him. And I love him to death, you know, but he needs to know, and this is why I'm doing all this now, you know. And I want him to grow up seeing that his dad stood up and did this.